Of course, as soon as we get them. In Otsego Township, residents are concerned that firefighters will no longer be responding to medical calls.
Some are worried about response times and the level of care. Fox 17's Darren Cunningham is in the newsroom after speaking with the man who came up with the idea and the city's fire chief who's disappointed. Darren?
Annie, Doug, we've received messages into our newsroom from Otsego Township residents, and as the township supervisor says, so is he. Calls he's been fielding over the past 24 hours trying to explain why he feels the decision is best for taxpayers.
People are upset, I understand that. And I'm sorry that they're upset, but I'm not sorry for the decision that we had to make.
A hard decision nonetheless, Brian Wynn tells Fox 17. The Otsego Township supervisor and other board members voting 6-1 that Otsego firefighters will no longer respond to medical calls. But Wynn says residents are still covered.
You call 911, the ambulance is still showing up like it always has.
He says the township is already contracted with Plainwell EMS for medical calls. So up until now, he says Otsego firefighters and Plainwell EMS have been doubling up, showing up to the same scene, which he says cost taxpayers extra money. Wynn explains it this way. With more than 450 medical calls in 2019, and each firefighter receiving an average of just under $19 an hour, and about 6 to 7 firefighters showing up to a scene, paid for a minimum of 1 hour, that's more than $54,000 for the year.
We have a responsibility to the residents of this township as a board to use our resources to their greatest extent. Paying twice for the same service is not using those resources in a wise way.
What's the reaction to that change?
Surprise. This came out of the clear blue. We had no knowledge that this was coming, so it was kind of a shock to us.
Otsego Fire Chief Brandon Weber says his personnel no longer responding to medical calls would reduce call volume, which could help prevent burnout. However, he says the quality of service for residents might suffer. Weber says about 10% of medical calls are not handled by Plainwell EMS. Instead, other supporting ambulance services coming from further away.
Plainwell EMS has good response times because they're coming from the Plainwell area, typically just a little over 6 minutes. However, those mutual aid partners coming from either Wayland or Allegan or Kalamazoo can have approximately a 16-minute average response time.
He says he would have liked an alternative approach.
If funding was an issue, perhaps finding a mechanism by which they could increase their funding.
I've had several phone calls in the last 24 hours, and the people are upset when they call, but when they see the reason and hear the reason why we made the change, then they understand.
The change is scheduled to take effect June 30th, and Wynn says the cost savings could go towards hiring a police officer. Live in the newsroom, Darren Cunningham, Fox 17 News.